Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Can you all hear me okay? Oh, amazing. What an affirming crowd. Well, happy spooky season to all who celebrate, which I'm assuming is most people in this room. So on the topic of fear and being scared recreationally, if you were like me as a kid, you loved to be scared. And I don't mean being scared of, the typical things like a test at school or bullies or eating your veggies. Although, true story, I was actually very terrified of the smell of celery and carrots for a very long time as a child because I was not good at eating my greens. Anyway, I digress. I'm talking about the more fun kind of scare, the kind of full body chills and thrills scared where you're like, I'm too scared to even go to the bathroom alone at night. I'm scared to look out a window or into a mirror because I'm afraid I'm going to see something that I'm not supposed to see, something supernatural that belongs to the night. So when I was a kid, I loved that feeling and I chased after it, and it's followed me up until this day as an adult. And for those of you who get it, you know what it feels like. And for those of you who are like, I have no idea what she's talking about, I'm so sorry, but bear with me. I compare that feeling of wanting to chase the scares to kind of being addicted to eating really spicy food. So if you are in that camp as well, you know what it's like. It's absolutely delicious. You feel all these kinds of thrills. It's a full body experience. Even though you're going to be paying for it later that night in the bathroom, probably alone when everyone else is asleep and you are in pain and you're like, why did I do this? It still feels worth it because it's so thrilling. It's kind of addictive in a weird way. So my theory around this, and there's a lot of people who are much smarter than I am who've talked about this at length, is that I think the reason we like to be scared recreationally, for those of us who, again, fit into this camp, is that it's no coincidence to me that a lot of the things that we're most afraid of are actually stand-ins for the bigger, cosmic, less fun, universal fears that come for us all. Things like death, loss, mortality, aging. These are all things that are going to happen to all of us in this room and to the people we love, and there's no way around it. And so I think that's the reason why, whether it's Halloween or any other time of year, we really like to be scared in the form of killer clowns or aliens or ghosts or haunted dolls, because it's a way of allowing ourselves to feel what it's like to actually be scared without actually having to confront those other way less fun things. So to illustrate what I mean, I'm going to take you back to my childhood. And so by a show of hands, who in this room had something in their house or grew up with something, whether it was a book or a movie or an image somewhere that you were absolutely terrified of, but you couldn't stop taking peeks at it? So show of hands. Yeah. Okay. That's a fair number of you. Yeah. Okay. So for me, the thing that I was the most scared of was the Goosebumps series. So 90s kids, shout out, anyone? Goosebumps? Yes, I see you. So the Goosebumps paperbacks, if you'll remember, their covers are very iconic. They're actually very scary, too. So I inherited a stack of these Goosebumps paperbacks from an older family friend, and really, I was way too young. I had no business having these books in my possession, and I was too scared to actually read them, but I loved looking at those gross covers. But I would only reserve it for special times. I would kind of thrust it into the back of my bookshelf so that I couldn't even come across the covers accidentally. But then sometimes in the middle of the night, I would creep over to my shelf, pull out one of those books and stare at it for as long as I could, whether it was into the eyes of a demented marionette or a vampire or a goopy mummy, whatever it was. I would force myself to stare at it for, I don't know how long, minutes probably, until I had enough and I couldn't take it anymore, and I would thrust it back onto the shelf, run back to bed, and throw the covers over my head. I don't know what it says about me that I did this all the time, but I'm reassured by the number of hands I saw earlier that, there are some of you out there who did something similar, maybe. So this might be why the thing I'm going to talk to you about now also came from a book, not from the Goosebumps series, sadly, but from a very different kind of book, a book of Korean fairy tales and folk tales written in English that I treasured as a child. So I think we have a visual here from that book that I'm going to show you. Yeah. So, pretty creepy. Hopefully you can see the main crux of this image, which is the expression on this girl's face. Yeah, she haunted my nightmares for years. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what you're looking at here and the context for this image. So this comes from a story called The Fox Girl. It's translated to The Fox Girl, and it's about an archetype called the kumiho. So for those who might be familiar, the kumiho is the nine-tailed fox spirit. There's different iterations of her that pop up through a lot of Southeast Asian folklore, but the kumiho is the Korean version, and she's the one I grew up with. So the kumiho, just to tell you a bit about the archetype itself before I go into what this story is about, she's like a nine-tailed fox spirit who often takes the form of a beautiful young girl or woman. And it's interesting because across these different iterations of the kumiho, there's, for example, in Japan, the kitsune, they're portrayed sort of differently. So the kitsune is often seen as kind of mischievous or like a trickster figure, not the kumiho. I mean, look at her. This is not a woman who's up to mischief. She means business. Pure evil. But the thing that really fascinates me about the kumiho is that she's this very hybrid creature, right? So she can transform into a beautiful woman. She's often seducing young men, tearing apart families, eating livestock. It's this whole thing. So, yeah, she's got a lot on her plate. So the story that this character comes from is about a young boy he's part of a regular family, and then one day the horses that his family owns keep turning up dead. And so his father tells him, hey, can you go stand watch and figure out who it is or what it is that's attacking our horses? So he agrees because he's a good son. He goes and stands by the stables. And then in the middle of the night, who does he see creeping around the corner looking like this but his own beloved younger sister? And he watches in horror as she proceeds to tear into these horses. I'm not going to go into detail because I know some of you are eating, but it's gross. It's very gross how she kills these horses and eats them. So the next morning, horrified, he tells his parents what he saw, and they don't believe him. They're like, how could you say such things about your sister? And so he goes to a monk to seek spiritual advice, and the monk tells him, hey, I think your sister has been possessed by this fox spirit. And he gives him these magic potions that he can use to defeat her. He goes back home, realizes that his parents are gone. His sister is like, they've gone away. Isn't that weird? The rest of the story, I'll kind of speed through it. Fox girl attacks boy runs away, boy uses magic potions to defeat her, and then she dies. And when she dies, her human form ebbs away, leaving nothing but a fox with 9 tails, proving that the monk and the boy's hunches were right all along. So in terms of scary stories, this has, I think, a lot of elements that make it memorable. There's folk magic, there's body horror, there's supernatural stuff. I think the most chilling thing of all is the fact that there's this malevolent force taking the form of a beloved family member. But the thing that bothered me the most, I think, both as a kid and now in this story, is the fact that she was so easily defeated. She's so evil and so powerful, and yet all it took was this little boy and some potions to destroy her. And the older I got and the more I learned about fairy tales, the nature of folk tales and what they're designed to teach us, the more I began to actually feel kind of sorry for her. I mean, she is an evil being who goes around preying on the weak and vulnerable and ripping out their insides, but she's also just a girl. I don't know, she's a very uniquely singular and feminized force, and I think that's why I kind of started to wonder a little bit more about her and what it would be like to be her. And so as a writer, when I started writing stories of my own, many of which were influenced by Korean folklore, I began wondering about the kumiho figure. And I started to write a story about a kumiho that was actually really bad at doing things that kumiho are supposed to do. She's afraid of everything. She has all these powers, but she doesn't know how to use them. And it occurred to me that the thing that she was most afraid of, because this kumiho also has fears, was loneliness, and fear of being abandoned was a huge thing for this character. And I think for me, it came down to the fact that this is such a hybridized creature. She's not really a human. She's not really an animal. She's kind of supernatural, but also very rooted in the body. And so this was a creature that I found myself wondering about and coming back to again and again. And so as I worked on this story, I realized I didn't have an ending, and I worked on it and thought about it for years. And I kept wondering, how would I end this story? Would she stay true to her true nature as a kumiho? Would she choose something else? And then I began thinking about the nature of fear. And so I'm going to get a little psychoanalytical on you all and say, what if the thing that we're most afraid of is actually the thing that we desire most? So thinking about this character that I'd written based on this legend, I thought, well, what if what she fears the most, which is being abandoned and being alone, actually, what if that's the thing she actually needs to run toward in order to figure out what's next for this creature? And so the more that I thought about it, the more I realized that the reason this image still speaks to me, and I'm still terrified. I can't even really turn fully to look at it because I'm too scared. The reason it scares me is because it makes me think about loss of control, something I think a lot of us in this room probably fear, and also what it means to be attacked by something or someone that you've deemed to be safe. You know, we live in a world where none of us can guarantee our safety or the safety of the ones we love. We live in dark, scary, and uncertain times, so it's no wonder that we turn to things like ghosts and ghouls or fox demons to sort of therapize ourselves. But, you know, in thinking about the Kumiho and what she's taught me, I've come to the conclusion that ultimately the thing that we need to do with fear is to not, in order to really deal with it, is not to run away from it, but to run towards it. And no matter what shape that fear might take, whether it's something strange or familiar to us, it's up to us to determine what is about this fear that's so specific to us and why it's appeared to us in the first place. And I'll close with just a little bit of writing/life advice from a writing mentor of mine. A writing teacher of mine used to say that the antidote to fear is curiosity. And she would say, don't get scared, get curious, which is something that I think about a lot. And I think it's very relevant for a lot of things we're living through at this moment. And what does it mean to be curious? Curiosity demands that we move closer to the thing that we might not understand or be afraid of. It asks us to ask questions, to look closely, and to try and understand, and to move forward anyway, even if the thing that we're scared of looks like that. So, thank you.